the first shells began to rain down on Leningrad early in September. It marked the beginning of a crucial episode in the war, the epic siege of the city, which would last for 900 days. As the German advance into northern Russia continued, the rail link to Leningrad was cut. The fate of Leningrad, and with it 30 Russian divisions, appeared to be sealed. The next stage of the battle was expected to be an attack on the beleaguered city. Contrary to their own expectations, the men of the German 18th Army were not to be asked to mount a full-scale attack on the city, and after a series of hotly contested battles for the outskirts, Hitler, uncharacteristically, ordered his troops to take Leningrad by means of a long drawn-out siege. It has been suggested that he was unnerved by the remote-controlled explosions which the Russians had used so effectively in Kiev. It is a decision which still provokes debate today. There are really two possible explanations for the failure of Army Group North to take Leningrad. One was the conflicting priorities in the mind of Adolf Hitler and the Army High Command. Hitler vacillated between prioritizing a number of objectives. There is also a school of thought which favors Hitler's adverse reaction to the huge losses of the German 6th Army in Kiev in August and September. In Kiev, thousands of German troops were lost to remote-controlled explosions, and thousands of others to desperate street fighting. This, it is thought, persuaded Hitler that no German troops should be made vulnerable by committing them to the inner city streets of Moscow and Leningrad. In any event, the 18th Army lacked the really heavy artillery necessary to reduce the defences of Leningrad. The massive guns of the German siege train had already been allocated to the sector of Army Group South, where they were earmarked for the coming battles in the Crimea. To move them all the way across Russia would have delayed the operation into winter. To compound the problems of the battles for the attackers, Panzer Group 4 was withdrawn from Army Group North in late September 1941 in order to support Army Group Center in Operation Typhoon, the final drive on Moscow. No German army group could afford to lose its tanks, but Army Group North lost virtually all of its armour. The withdrawal of the tanks from Army Group North meant that the army was virtually immobile. It was to remain so for almost 3 years. It is easy to suggest that the loss of Panzer Group 4 in September 1941 was directly responsible for the failure of Army Group North to take its strategic objective of Leningrad. However, this is by no means certain. The capture of a city as large and well defended as Leningrad was by no means certain, even with a strong armoured force. Nevertheless, the removal of Panzer Group 4 clearly did not help the cause of Army Group North. It meant that Army Group North would be denied this one formation and the size, speed and fighting power to advance quickly into the regions beyond the city of Leningrad, link up with the Finns and effectively cut off the city from its supplies. The disappearance of Panzer Group 4 proved to be a forerunner of things to come. From that point onwards, the evidence was clear that of the three German army groups, Army Group North was considered to be the poor relation. It soon became obvious that they could expect to receive no substantial additional support of any kind, and the artillery siege train would never be sent to Leningrad. The 18th Army therefore had no alternative but to take Leningrad by siege. It seemed that the decisive battles on the Eastern Front would be fought elsewhere. With the commencement of the siege of Leningrad, a relatively stable front line appeared in the northern sector. The 16th Army fought on the right flank of the northern sector, where it was adjacent to the left wing of Army Group Centre. The 18th Army fought on the left flank of the 16th Army, and as such formed the extreme northern end of the front line. Army Group North was to remain doggedly committed to the northern flank of the German armies fighting on the Eastern Front for the entire duration of the war. The siege of Leningrad was the stage for an intense struggle that would in later years be recognized as a key event in that conflict of inhuman savagery. The opening stages were bitterly fought in the suburbs of the city. When General Zhukov arrived to take over the defense of the city on the 10th of September 1941, he found the defenders in an advanced state of disorganization and the inhabitants close to panic. Undaunted, he briskly set about bolstering its defenses. A shortage of anti-tank guns was dealt with by converting anti-aircraft artillery to the task of attempting to halt the panzers. 6 brigades of naval infantry and students were formed, and reinforcements drafted in from the Karelian Isthmus. Zhukov began to take the fight to the Germans through raids and counterattacks. But by now, the German troops had pierced the inner circle of defences and were rampaging through the suburbs.